Hello and welcome. Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India News Hour, India's voice to the world. I'm Gautam Roy, and coming up in the next hour, Israel rules out any ceasefire in Gaza without the release of hostages. Its forces claim to have split the war zone in two halves. The US presses on with its diplomatic overdrive to secure pauses in the fighting. Blinken meets Turkish Foreign Minister Fidan. CIA Chief Bill Burns is in Tel Aviv. Australia's Prime Minister Anthony Albanese is meeting Chinese President Xi Jinping in Beijing in a visit being seen as a bid to thaw frozen ties. And Sri Lanka's government dismisses its cricket board, replacing it with an interim committee after a disastrous World Cup campaign. Amid the escalating Israel-Hamas conflict, Israeli forces are sealing off parts of Jerusalem. The move comes after police said 2 Israeli police personnel were stabbed near the Old City of Jerusalem on Monday. The 2 were security personnel and were attacked near a police station just outside the Old City's walls. U.S. intelligence agency CIA Chief William J. Burns is visiting Israel for discussions with leaders and intelligence officials. According to media reports, this visit is in line with the U.S. trying to prod Israel to pursue a more targeted approach while attacking Hamas, allow pauses in the fighting for aid to enter Gaza, and do more to avoid civilian casualties. And amid the fighting, the U.S. Ohio-class submarine has arrived in the Middle East region on Sunday. Since the 7th of October, when Hamas launched this terrorist attack on Israel, the U.S. military has bolstered its presence in the Middle East. Ohio-class submarines are nuclear-powered submarines which are capable of carrying cruise missiles and conducting special operations. They're designed for extended strategic deterrence patrols. In mid-October, the Pentagon ordered the USS Dwight D. Eisenhower aircraft carrier strike group to the eastern Mediterranean near Israel to deter Iran or Hezbollah from joining the Israel-Hamas conflict. And thousands of lives have been lost as the Israel-Hamas conflict has deepened. The United States says it's working towards humanitarian pause in Gaza to allow release of hostages held by Hamas. Take a look at this report.
It's day 31. The conflict between the Israeli Defense Forces and Hamas is escalating. The Israeli army has opened a humanitarian corridor in northern Gaza to allow civilians to move south. The Jordanian Air Force airdropped urgent medical aid to the Jordanian Field Hospital in Gaza. Meanwhile, the United States has stepped up its diplomacy in the Middle East as Arab countries are anxious over the situation in Gaza. They are holding hectic parleys. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken, who is visiting the region for the second time since October 7, has landed in Turkey. Blinken is meeting with Turkish leaders over the conflict. Washington says it's working to ensure a humanitarian pause in Gaza, which would allow more aid to Palestinians and the release of hostages held by Hamas.
Now, it's important that as we're engaged in pursuing humanitarian pause, this can be something that advances the prospect of getting the hostages back.
Israel said it has uncovered a network of Hamas tunnels, command centers, and rocket launchers under and around hospitals in northern Gaza.
Hamas systematically exploits hospitals as part of its war machine.
Hamas has taken more than 240 people hostage. It has been more than a month. Families are eagerly waiting for their loved ones. Israel has rejected calls for a ceasefire in Gaza until the release of all hostages held by Hamas. The West Asia is on the verge of a major humanitarian crisis. Abhishek Bose for DD India.
And Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei has met with the leader of Tehran-backed Palestinian group Hamas, Ismail Haniyeh, in Tehran. Iranian state media reported on Sunday, a day after the Hamas officials said they held a meeting in recent days. Iranian state media said Haniyeh briefed Khamenei on the latest developments in the Gaza Strip, as well as the developments in the West Bank. Without elaborating when the meeting took place, Iran's Tasnim news agency said the country's top authority, Khamenei, emphasized Tehran's consistent policy of supporting the Palestinian forces against Israel. Israeli forensic teams are screening cars that were damaged during the 7th of October Hamas attack, looking for evidence of human remains. The vehicles were collected in a junkyard in southern Israel in Netivoth, where the forensic teams are also trying to identify owners of the cars and what might have happened to them during the attack. At least 1,400 Israelis were killed in the deadliest day of the nation's 75-year history. Let's take you across live to the conflict zone. Joining us now is DD India's correspondent, my colleague Amritpal Singh. Amrit, good afternoon to you from Delhi. Hope you're taking care of yourself. Now, pressure is building up further on Israel to pause the fight, but it seems to be pressing on. How effective is its campaign against Hamas proving to be?
Well, it's not effective at all, as in Israel has made it very clear that it is not going to pause. Forget about ceasefire, is not even looking at a humanitarian pause. When Anthony Blinken is here in the region, he met Benjamin Netanyahu and his war cabinet as well. And he was carrying a message from President Biden saying, at least go in for a humanitarian pause. Benjamin Netanyahu, after the meeting, said, take those words out of your lexicon. We will go on full steam. That means, you know, they are at the gates of Gaza. They could enter Gaza for close combat in the next 48 hours. Unless they finish their or complete their military objective of completely decimating Hamas, they are not going to stop. So the international pressure, you know, despite their former prime ministers of Australia and Britain coming here, we've seen, you know, various world leaders come here, call Benjamin Netanyahu, but the overriding sentiment here, which is guiding both Benjamin Netanyahu's actions and the IDF's actions, is that they want to finish Hamas and they will not stop unless that is done.
But Netanyahu has also been quoted in reports, Amrit, saying that there won't be any ceasefire till all the hostages are returned. So is that something that is being put across to Hamas, that you do this and then we will, you know, go easier on you?
Yes, not easier on them. Basically, what is happening is that Hamas is saying, both sides have put their conditions, because negotiations are going on mediated by Qatar. You rightly said that Netanyahu says that unless you release the hostages, we will not stop, we will not cease fire. But in the same breath, he also says that we will also not stop unless we achieve our military objective. The idea is, the strategy is that, you know, finish Hamas, but on the hostages bit, negotiate with a weakened Hamas. Right now, they have caused some damage to Hamas, but mainly Hamas remains intact. They don't put out numbers. We know the civilian casualties are close to about 10,000 dead, but if you count the numbers that even the IDF is putting of Hamas dead, that is not more than 20. So clearly they realize that they haven't been able to, you know, weaken Hamas. So therefore, Hamas now, negotiates from a point of strength. So they want to first militarily weaken them, then, get the hostages released. So basically, they have put their condition saying that you release hostages, we will think about ceasefire then. Hamas, right, on the other hand, says, you release our prisoners and you stop the going for a ceasefire, we'll release the hostages then. So that is what is happening. There is a lot of shadow boxing when you read these statements
Yes,
carefully.
meanwhile, Hamas has also been
uh,
saying that a lot of those hostages are already dead, and they're saying that in any case, you can't release hostages when there's active live firing going on. But now, what can you tell us about the CIA chief's trip to Tel Aviv and Blinken, of course, meeting his counterpart in Ankara? It's being said that the US is striving for strategic pauses in the fighting to save lives, but is there more to it?
That is what the US would want, but the Israelis are not listening to them. William Burns will be here in Tel Aviv in a few hours, and he would be, talking with the Mossad and Shabak, his counterparts here, to see, what they can do. One, to see that hostage release happens, their coordination in terms of military, and secondly, how they can coordinate to see that the war does not escalate further. In a very interesting and a very rare message by the US Central Command, which takes care of the Mediterranean and the area around it, they put out a tweet a few hours ago saying the Ohio-class nuclear submarine has reached the Mediterranean waters. Now,
Yes.
that is really, really rare. They basically, I think, they are deterring Iran that if your proxies, like the Hezbollah or the Syrian army, does anything, then be prepared, we would hit back. Because Haniyeh has met Khamenei in Tehran. So Iran has, made those statements that it'll be an all-out war unless you stop this, and then don't blame us. We wouldn't be able to stop it. I think the CIA, William Burns, meetings here today would primarily be focused on how Israel and US can, coordinate more and converge their military strategies should things go out of hand, because things have already started going out of hand. Yesterday in southern Turkey, protests were taking place and they tried to attack
Yes.
the US base there. So, so Blinken is in Ankara. Blinken met Mahmoud Abbas in Ramallah in an unannounced visit, though we have been told that it didn't go down very well, because Mahmoud Abbas very clearly told Blinken that, look, unless ceasefire happens, you don't expect any cooperation from me. He, in fact, even dangled the carrot, saying, we could envision a role for Al-Fatah post-Hamas. But, Mahmoud Abbas is said to have told him very clearly, those things will be taken care of then. We'll cross the bridge when we come to it. But right now, you need to tell the Israelis that stop, because Palestinians are dying, and that directly affects my standing.
Right.
Gautam?
Yes, it's a tough situation all around for all parties concerned, and for the US more so, because if there's to be a blowback in the wider region, it's the US which has assets in different locations, and they, like you mentioned in Turkey, will definitely come under fire. Thanks a lot for joining us for the moment, Amritpal Singh. And still to come up on DD9 News Hour, Australia's Prime Minister Anthony Albanese is meeting Chinese President Xi Jinping in Beijing in a visit being seen as a bid to thaw frozen ties. Former US President Donald Trump is set to testify today in a New York civil case where he stands accused of fraudulently inflating his wealth. And top G7 diplomats are set to meet in Tokyo on Tuesday. Discussions are expected to be dominated by the Israel-Hamas fighting.
Turning crisis into opportunity, transforming ideas into action, stories of real change, tales of sustainable solution.
This series is going to tell us of such change makers.
Watch Change Makers on DD India.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Gautam Roy. Now, Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese is set to hold bilateral talks with Chinese President Xi Jinping on Monday. Albanese became the first Australian leader to visit China since 2016 when he landed in Shanghai on Saturday. Albanese's government has taken credit for stabilizing ties with China since coming to office last year. Former U.S. President Donald Trump is due to testify on Monday in a New York civil trial accusing the former president of fraudulently inflating his wealth. State prosecutors are seeking to bar Trump from doing business in his home state and $250 million in damages. Our U.S. correspondent Ira Spitzer reports.
New York Attorney General Letitia James has accused Donald Trump and others at the Trump Organization of inflating the value of assets by billions of dollars in order to obtain better terms on loans and insurance policies. Trump has denied those charges and called the proceedings biased, setting up a courtroom confrontation. Last week, Trump's two sons, Donald Jr. and Eric Trump, both testified and tried to distance themselves from the accounting aspects of the family business. That may prove more difficult for the former president, since he is the owner of the Trump Organization, whose companies are involved in real estate and other ventures, and ran it until becoming president in 2016. Even before the trial, the judge ruled that fraud had been committed, so now it's essentially a matter of determining how serious the penalties should be, something that will also be decided by the judge and not a jury. Because it's a civil trial, Trump can't go to jail, but prosecutors have sought to fine him and others as much as $250 million and revoke the organization's ability to continue operating in New York, where it has properties such as the Trump Tower in Manhattan. It's one of several trials that Trump is facing as he seeks to regain the presidency in elections next year. The former president is currently the frontrunner to be the Republican Party's nominee to challenge Joe Biden. Ira Spitzer reporting in San Francisco for DD India.
And let me now take you back to that previous story where we informed you how the Australian Prime Minister is there in Beijing to meet Xi Jinping, the Chinese president. It's a meet that's been building up in terms of a bid to mend ties that had come under a lot of strain in recent years. DD India's Patrick Falk is with us to let us know more about it. Joining us from Singapore. Good afternoon to you, Patrick. An Australian PM is visiting China after a gap of 7 years, and relations have only gone downhill in recent years. Now, will there be a turnaround at this point?
Well, everything that we've seen so far suggests that there will be a turnaround, at least to some extent. Anthony Albanese has made it a priority for his government to mend relations since coming to office about a year ago. And this morning, significantly and symbolically, he made a visit to the Middle Kingdom's Temple of Heaven, retracing the steps of Gough Whitlam, the Australian Prime Minister who visited China in 1973, a year after the two countries established diplomatic relations, after which Anthony Albanese said that Beijing has changed a lot since then. But what is constant is that engagement remains important. Now, Albanese has had some success in repairing those fractured ties since coming to office. China has notably lifted most of the trade restrictions imposed since 2020. And in recent weeks, we've also seen the release of the Australian journalist Cheng Lei, who was detained for 3 years on unspecified national security charges. Now, analysts say that China won't want to dwell on a lot of what's happened in recent years. And in many ways, it has backfired for China and only seen Canberra be pushed closer towards Washington. Instead, China will want to promote the narrative that it is Australia that is coming back into the fold and doing what is in its national interests.
Okay. Now, just in recent days, we've seen China making concerted bid to salvage relations with the US, UK and now Australia, despite major irritants from Taiwan to AUKUS to chips and critical minerals still in play. Why is China playing ball these days?
Well, yeah, it's an interesting question. And, you know, President Xi has come under quite some criticism, particularly from party elders in recent months over his foreign policy, which has in many ways left China very much isolated from many Western countries and damaged relations that have been built up over decades and also hurt China's economy. Now, the bugbears, the sticking points, the red lines like Taiwan and AUKUS and semiconductors, they are all still there. But perhaps China wants to take a more pragmatic approach, much like Australia is. The mantra of the Albanese government is to cooperate with China where it can, disagree where it must, and engage in our national interest. So again, as I say, it is perhaps taking a different turn in its foreign policy and doing what is in its national interest, particularly at a time when its economy is slowing and it needs to rebuild these relationships.
Okay. Well, let's see what kind of success do they really sort of garner in this particular visit. It's a much-watched space right now. Thanks a lot for joining us for the moment, Patrick Falk. Millions of Americans will be heading to the polls on Tuesday with key races in 3 states, Kentucky, Mississippi and Virginia. There's also a vote to enshrine abortion rights into Ohio's state constitution. The results of these races will be the first indicators of what voters are focusing on ahead of the 2024 presidential elections, which are now just a year away. Tony Waterman has more.
As the clock ticks down to Tuesday's elections, candidates are out in full force. A last-ditch effort to wrangle new voters and rally supporters.
It's because of each and every one of you here that we are going to win on Tuesday, November 7th.
Andy Beshear is fighting to keep his job as Kentucky governor. A Democrat in a deeply red conservative state, he's employed an interesting tactic, boasting about the benefits of Bidenomics without actually mentioning the president directly.
An unpopular president drags the party down. This is what we saw with Trump in 2020. A president who's personally popular will be able to gather seats.
Right now, Joe Biden's approval rating is hovering around 40%, hardly enough to coalesce voters in red states. It's a bit hazier in purple states like Virginia, where every seat in the state legislature is up for grabs. A Republican win would empower Governor Glenn Youngkin to enact conservative policies on abortion, taxes, and education, making it one of the most closely watched races in the country.
Because Virginia is a battleground state, both parties look at Virginia as looking to see which issues are working. And if there are issues that are working in Virginia, those are going to be the issues we see in the fall 2024 election.
One big unknown is whether anti-abortion policies will galvanize voters like it did in the midterms. Ohio may provide answers.
The leading opponents of Issue 1 want an extreme ban on abortion, with no exceptions for rape, not even for children.
Voters in the swing state will decide Tuesday whether to enshrine abortion rights into the state's constitution.
If they look and say, wow, it still has traction, it's definitely going to be a big issue. For the Republicans, they're going to look at the economy.
The outcome of Tuesday's elections will provide valuable insight into what issues are and aren't top of mind for voters headed into 2024. Those elections now just a year away, giving candidates from both parties ample time to adjust their strategies. In Austin, Texas, Tony Waterman reporting for DD India.
The conflict in the Middle East is expected to dominate the agenda when top diplomats from G7 countries meet in Tokyo on Tuesday. The foreign ministers are wrapping up a year of G7 meetings as Japan looks to successfully conclude its presidency of the group. Chris Gilbert has this from Tokyo.
Well, when the G7 foreign ministers meet here in Tokyo next week, it is going to be the conflict in the Middle East that will be top of the agenda. That wasn't always the case. When Japan's foreign minister Yoko Kamikawa originally called this summit back in September, the goal was simply an end-of-year catch-up, a wrap of all the meetings, G7 meetings so far, a catch-up on how member countries are doing on their goals and their priorities stated in those meetings, such as countering perceived Chinese military assertiveness while maintaining independent economic and diplomatic ties with Beijing, supporting Ukraine in its conflict against Russia, cooperating on climate change and AI regulation and a myriad of other topics. But it is going to be Israel's ongoing bombardment of Gaza, democratic calls around the world for a ceasefire. These issues are going to be discussed. Japan is going to be concerned. It is going to be wary of analysts' speculations that the U.S. resources, the military resources going towards Israel at the moment and going towards Ukraine at the moment, may be depleting military resources that could be coming in this direction towards Japan, towards South Korea, and the U.S.'s ability, pledged ability to protect Japan and South Korea's interests in what it calls a free and open Indo-Pacific. Japan is going to be looking for reassurances from U.S. State Secretary Antony Blinken that this part of the world remains a priority for the U.S., and certainly a meeting that South Korea is going to be watching very closely as well. Chris Gilbert in Tokyo reporting for DD India.
Let's now get you some more updates from around the world. Britain's Prince William raced on a dragon boat with expatriates in Singapore on Monday ahead of the Earthshot Prize, which is being hosted by Singapore this week. Prince William also paid a courtesy call to President Tharman Shanmugaratnam and later held a meeting with Singaporean leaders during his 4-day official visit to the country. A car crashed in the front lawn of a pub in Daylesford, a rural town in Australia, killing 5 people, including 2 children. Several others were injured, including 66-year-old driver, who was admitted at the hospital. Formal identification of the victims is pending, while the cause of the accident is yet to be determined. Strong winds and heavy rainfall took place in western France's La Rochelle as Storm Domingos hit the country overnight. Over 247,000 French households were without electricity due to Storm Héran and Domingos last Sunday. So far, the 2 storms have caused 3 deaths and 9 people have been seriously injured. As part of the Diaspora Week, Pravasi Parichay, the Embassy of India in Riyadh, along with Prasar Bharati, presented a unique program, Sanskritotsav. The entire program was in Sanskrit and celebrated the ancient wisdom and beauty of the most scientific language in the world, Sanskrit. And still to come on DD India News Hour. Russia attacks a key Ukrainian port, but Ukraine claims to have repelled Russia's offensive. US, South Korea and Japan agreed to launch a high-level consultative group on countering North Korean cyber activities. And Delhi and its surroundings remain the worst polluted urban environment around the world in an ongoing air emergency. Welcome back. You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Gautam Roy. Before we go any further, another look at our top story. Israel rules out any ceasefire in Gaza without the release of hostages. Its forces claim to have split the war zone in 2 halves. The US presses on with its diplomatic overdrive to secure pauses in the fighting. Blinken meets Turkish Foreign Minister Fidan. CIA Chief Bill Burns is going to be in Tel Aviv. And Australia's Prime Minister Anthony Albanese is meeting Chinese President Xi Jinping in Beijing in a visit being seen as a bid to thaw frozen ties. Let's now get you updates from the Russia-Ukraine war. Conflicting reports emerged on Monday as Russia claimed its forces attacked a Ukrainian airport, while Ukraine asserted that its armed forces had successfully repelled Russian attacks on several fronts. According to Russian Defense Ministry, their forces repelled Ukrainian offensives in multiple locations and claimed to have destroyed Ukrainian tanks, armored vehicles and self-propelled artillery. Meanwhile, Ukraine reported clashes and stated its intent to use loitering munitions for a winter attack on Russian territory. And another incident, at least 5 people were injured in a Russian missile strike on Odessa late on Sunday. One of the city's principal art galleries, Odessa National Fine Arts Museum, was badly damaged in the attack. The museum, in one of the oldest palaces of Odessa, houses more than 10,000 pieces of art, including paintings by some of the best-known Russian and Ukrainian artists of the late 19th and early 20th century.
Our Pearl, our city's national art museum. Today we have seen yet again how the barbarians treat our cultural heritage. The church, the museum are within the UNESCO zone. There is nothing that can stop them.
And Russian military forces carried out airstrikes on a drone warehouse in Syria's Idlib governorate, the Russian Interfax news agency has reported. No information about the scale of the damage or potential casualties was available. The Syrian army accused rebels, calling them Islamist jihadists, for attacks on government-held areas in Idlib and Aleppo provinces and denied indiscriminate shelling of civilian areas under rebel control. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky has called on the US to provide more funding to help his forces counter Russia and invited former US President Donald Trump to fly in to see the scale of the conflict for himself. In an interview airing on Sunday, Zelensky invited Donald Trump, a Republican, to visit Ukraine and see the fallout of the conflict. Zelensky said he'll need 24 minutes to explain to President Trump that he can't manage this war. Trump has been sharply critical of US support for Kyiv and has said he could end the war in 24 hours if re-elected. The United States, South Korea and Japan have agreed to launch a high-level consultative group on countering North Korean cyber activities. South Korea's presidential office said on Monday that such cyber activities finance the North's unlawful weapons programs. The announcement comes after the leaders of the 3 countries agreed at a summit in August at Camp David that they would establish a new trilateral working group for the North's cyber threats. Security advisors of the 3 countries also agreed to hold quarterly meetings under the new framework. And DD India's Chris Gilbert has more on the story. Listen in.
They're looking to really boost their coordination, their cooperation, their strategy to effectively prevent any escalation in security threats or cybersecurity events in the future. The fact that they're even having these talks is fruit born from an expedited warming of ties between Japan and South Korea over the last year, at least at the managerial level, at the executive level. The US is able to get them into the room together for these kinds of talks, and what they're looking to do is make them even more regular. That is the main takeaway from these security chief talks last week, is that they want to now meet quarterly to discuss global cybersecurity threats, with an eye, of course, on North Korea. It's been a reasonably quiet year for North Korea in terms of its illegal ballistic missile launches. In 2022, of course, we saw a record year. Some accounts showing 73 to 90 missiles launched by North Korea. We've seen about half that many this year. And the other reason, of course, is the ongoing bombardment of Gaza going on at the moment by Israel is likely to effectively hijack the conversation at this meeting. However, when it does come to the Indo-Pacific, when it does come to North Korea, Japan is going to very much be looking for assurances from the United States.
Now in Tokyo, a missile evacuation drill was held on Monday to help residents get ready amid growing concerns over North Korea's test launches of ballistic missiles. Around 60 residents participated in the drill, with one of the groups simulating an evacuation scenario inside a subway train station. The drill has come after growing demands by the government amid an increase in number of missile launches since last year. North Korea fired 59 missiles in 2022 and most recently fired 2 short-range ballistic missiles into the sea off its east coast on the 13th of September while its leader, Kim Jong-un, was on an official visit to Russia. And in India's neighborhood in Bangladesh, the second day of the countrywide 48-hour blockade is underway today, with some incidents of violence and arson. The blockade is being enforced by the main opposition Bangladesh National Party and its allies to force Sheikh Hasina's party to quit and hold elections under a neutral administration. The 48-hour-long blockade sparked stray incidents of violence where more than 15 buses were burnt by the mob throughout the country. The blockade has affected public transport, which also created scarcity of basic essentials. 228 platoons of border guard Bangladesh have been deployed across the country to maintain law and order during the blockade. Let me now take you across live to Dhaka. Joining us is DD India's Naval Singh Parmar. Good afternoon to you, Naval. What can you tell us about the situation in Bangladesh due to this 48-hour Bandh call? Is it better or worse today compared to yesterday?
Yes, today it is better than yesterday. Now in the street of Dhaka, you can see some sort of public transport, and as well as there are auto rickshaws and private vehicles and motorcycles and rickshaws are there. So people are moving freely compared to yesterday, and there is a heavier traffic on road than the yesterday. Second thing, yesterday evening, government deployed huge number of battalions of BGP across the Bangladesh. Yes, still yesterday it was just 27 battalion of BGP on road of the Bangladesh, but today there are 228 battalions are there on the roads and the other cities of the Bangladesh. So law enforcement from the government side is heavy, and due to that, those who are violating the peace and order, now government is trying to, or police is trying to catch them, and many of them are now behind bar. And most of the BNP leaders and activists, including their Secretary General, Mr. Fakhrul, is also now behind the bar. So the government is taking this situation heavy-handedly. So now it is better on road compared to the yesterday.
So opposition leaders are being put behind bars. What happens once the Bandh runs its course? What more is the opposition thinking of doing, and how is the Sheikh Hasina government looking to counter it?
This kind of situation is there since 28 October. So BNP is step by step announcing a new kind of protest. Earlier it was Grand Rally, then it was Hartal, and now it is blockade, countrywide blockade. It is second phase of blockade. So by today evening or tomorrow morning, BNP may announce another kind of agitation. And as per today, there are no sign of any preparedness from the BNP side to hold dialogue with the government. So they may call another kind of agitation or some blockade or some kind of program they will announce in today or tomorrow.
All right, Naval, thank you so much for joining us from Dhaka with that update on the opposition's Bandh. Now back home, the heads of the border guarding forces of India and Nepal are meeting in New Delhi today to discuss crucial issues related to borders. This is the 7th annual coordination meeting between the Sashastra Seema Bal and Nepal's Armed Police Force, and it's scheduled to take place from the 6th of November, which is today, till the 8th. The talks at the level of the two heads of the forces serve as a crucial platform for both forces to engage in discussions on border-related matters. The meeting is aimed to strengthen the coordination between the two border guarding forces for more effective management of the open and unfenced Indo-Nepal border. The last coordinating meeting was held in Kathmandu on in September 2022. Malaysian Foreign Affairs Minister Dr. Zamri Abdul Kadir has arrived in India for a two-day visit. The visiting dignitary will co-chair the 6th India-Malaysia Joint Commission meeting with Indian counterpart Dr. S. Shankar during his Tuesday visit. The Joint Commission meeting will review the progress of enhanced strategic partnership with Malaysia in several areas. The Malaysian minister will also call on India's Vice President. The visit will provide an opportunity to comprehensively review bilateral relations and to explore ways to further deepen and strengthen them. Now, the first Australia-India Education and Skill Council meeting was held in the western city of Gandhinagar in Gujarat on Monday. The two sides comprehensively reviewed bilateral cooperation in education and skilling and agreed to further strengthen their knowledge and skilling partnerships for greater mobility, employability and prosperity of people in both the countries. Indian Education Minister Dharmendra Pradhan expressed satisfaction as the steady progress made on mutual recognition of qualifications, establishment of joint working group, joint skill collaboration, study in India, visa-related issues for Indian students and research scholars, among others.
ऑस्ट्रेलिया और भारत की एजुकेशन और स्किल सेक्टर में संपर्क गहरा होते जा रहा है। 6 और 7 2 दिन भारत और ऑस्ट्रेलिया की द्विपक्षीय वार्ता भी होने वाला है। रिसर्च, स्किल डेवलपमेंट और कई सारे जो जॉइंट प्रोजेक्ट है इसके बारे में कुछ अनुभव एक्सचेंज भी होगा।
India's Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology, that's MITI, has issued blocking orders against 22 illegal betting apps and websites, including Mahadev Book and Ready and Press Stopper. The action follows investigations conducted by the Enforcement Directorate against illegal betting app syndicate and subsequent raids, revealing the app's unlawful operations.
हम लोन ऐप और बेटिंग ऐप हमेशा जब भी जो भी रिपोर्ट करते हैं हम हमेशा उसको ब्लॉक करते हैं। आरबीआई के साथ हम काम करते हैं लोन ऐप्स के लिए और बेटिंग ऐप्स के लिए तो हमने एक नोटिफिकेशन भी जारी कर दिया है ऑनलाइन अप्रैल 2023 में क्या परमिसिबल है क्या परमिसिबल नहीं है इंटरनेट में और जो भी रिपोर्ट करते हैं प्लेटफॉर्म्स को प्लेटफॉर्म का दायित्व बनता है कि वो निकालें।
India's Information and Broadcasting Minister Anurag Singh Thakur, while addressing a curtain-raiser media briefing in New Delhi on the upcoming International Film Festival of India, said that India is seeing highest production of films in the world.
India's media and entertainment industry is a force to be reckoned with, the ranking as the 5th largest market globally. And this market is growing with each passing year. If you look at the average growth of the last 3 years, it stands at average growth of 20% annually. So with highest production of films in the world, our industry stands as a beacon of innovation, creativity, reaching every corner of the country and now cutting across the boundaries, reaching every nook and corner of the world.
Air quality across cities in India, large parts of North India really continues to remain in the critical category. On Monday, pollution levels in and around the national capital Delhi have consistently been in the critical category, with air quality index readings in the range of 400 at various locations for the past few days.
Complaints of eye irritation and itchy throats are on the rise as the pollution menace tightens its grip on several Indian states. The veil of air pollution continues to enshroud the nation's capital.
There is pain in throat and chest. We are wearing masks because of pollution. Pollution has increased a lot in the past few days.
The impact is not limited to the national capital alone. It is affecting the day-to-day lives of people in neighboring states and other major cities across India.
Pollution is more than what we had expected. The situation is pretty bad. I don't know what is going to happen, but this will have adverse effect on our health.
The repercussions of air pollution on public health are becoming increasingly severe. According to medical experts, air pollution not only affects our respiratory system, but also damages the brain and heart, potentially causing anxiety across all age groups. Recognizing the grave public health threat posed by air pollution, the government has initiated foundational steps, including the implementation of the final phase of the pollution control policy. Now let's take a look at the latest measures taken by the government to curb pollution. Stop the entry of truck traffic into Delhi, except for trucks providing essential services. No permit to light commercial vehicles from other states except EVs, CNG and BS6 vehicles. Ban on plying of Delhi-registered diesel-operated MGVs and HGVs in Delhi. Ban on commercial and demolition activities, also applicable for linear projects. NCR state governments and Delhi government may take a decision on switching to online classes for schools. NCR state governments and Delhi government to take a decision on 50% work strength and work from home alternatives. Central government may take appropriate decision on work from home for its employees. And NCR state governments may consider other measures as necessary. Additionally, the National Clean Air Programme, a time-bound national-level strategy aimed at combating rising air pollution by 2024, has been put into action.
And let me now take you across live to my colleague Jessica Tareja for, in fact, amid the worsening situation, the air situation in the national capital, Jessica Tareja has provided an update on the current conditions in the national capital as well.
As the toxic haze continues to cloud New Delhi, doctors say that long-term impact on health could be severe, potentially leading to even lung cancer. According to recent studies, average resident of Delhi could lose up to 12 years of life to air pollution. The government and authorities are putting measures in place. Schools have been shut. People have been asked to stay indoors. 50% of the state government employees are working from home. In fact, private employers are also considering the same. But these measures are not enough. People say this kind of institutional response is not helping the situation on the ground. Perhaps more concerted approach to tackle this menace could help in dealing with the crisis in the long run. This is Jessica Taneja with video journalist Radhi Krishna in New Delhi for DD India.
In fact, some steps have just been announced by the Delhi government, and apart from that, the Commission for Air Quality Management has already taken certain more stricter measures to improve the bad air. Let me now bring in Jessica Tareja live as well. Jessica, even my throat's a bit caught up, but do tell us what is the latest measures that have been taken to ensure that we breathe better.
Well, Gautam, do take care, but yes, the situation on the ground seems pretty grim as well. There is usual traffic right now, but you'd expect a lot less people on the streets post-Diwali. That's the odd-even scheme being implemented by the Delhi government. It was in the works. It wasn't implemented last year, looking at the similar situation, but this year it has been put in place since the PM 2.5 levels were recorded at 471. That's the highest it's ever been. Soon it could be 500, which is, I guess, immeasurable and would be problematic. Would be a problematic stage for the government and the authorities to tackle. Now, the odd-even scheme for the vehicles will be implemented after Diwali. That is the 13th of November. It will continue for another week. That's what we have information right now. And other measures, as you pointed out, schools being shut. And, of course, a lot of employers also looking at making people work from home is one another option. But if you see right now, the situation doesn't look great. People are still breathing that toxic air. And this whole odd-even scheme, how much will it help? We don't know. Because if you look at the figures, the transport sector contribution of the PM 2.5 levels was merely 14%. On the other hand, you have the biomass burning, which accounts for nearly 25%, which is double of what the transport sector is contributing to right now. So we don't know how effective it would be, but it's a start anyway.
Yes, it's a virtual admission that ways to get a grip on the situation with the stubble burning concerned have completely failed, which is why we're seeing such air in Delhi. Thanks a lot for joining us for the moment, Jessica Taneja. Let's now take a look at some other updates that are coming in from around the country as well. India's President Draupadi Murmu, in the presence of India's Vice President Jagdeep Dhankar and Prime Minister Narendra Modi, administered the oath of office to Hiralal Samaria, Chief Information Commissioner in the Central Information Commission, at a ceremony held today at Rashtrapati Bhavan in the national capital. India's Vice President Jagdeep Dhankar will be on a one-day visit to the Indian city of Mumbai. During his day-long tour, the Vice President is scheduled to visit the Indian Institute of Technology, Bombay, where he'll interact with the students and faculty members of the institute. The crest of the Indian Navy's latest indigenous under-construction guided missile destroyer, Surat, is scheduled to be unveiled today at a ceremony to be held in the Indian city of Surat. This warship is named after the commercial capital of Gujarat, a city with rich maritime and shipbuilding history. And still to come on DD India News Hour, top oil exporters Saudi Arabia and Russia decide to extend their output cuts until the end of this year. Elon Musk's artificial intelligence company xAI is set to release its inaugural AI model named Grok, which is said to have a sense of humor.
Turning crisis into opportunity, transforming ideas into action, stories of real change, tales of sustainable solution.
This series is going to tell stories of such change makers.
Watch Change Makers on DD India.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Gautam Roy. Now, top oil exporters Saudi Arabia and Russia have decided to prolong their additional voluntary oil output cuts until the end of this year. The two countries have confirmed that they will review the cuts next month to consider the possibility of extending, deepening or increasing the reductions. The decision to extend the voluntary output cuts aligns with the ongoing efforts of the OPEC Plus countries to maintain market stability. OPEC Plus has been implementing production cuts since last year. These measures are seen as proactive actions to prevent any potential destabilization of the oil market. Elon Musk's artificial intelligence company xAI is set to release its inaugural AI model named Grok. In a series of posts, Musk said the competitors to ChatGPT would be made available to premium subscribers on his X platform after testing. Musk also revealed that Grok aims to create AI tools that assist humanity in its quest for understanding and knowledge, and that Grok has been designed to answer questions with a bit of wit. And you're watching DD India News Hour. It's time now to get you all the sporting updates as well. Well, after a disappointing World Cup campaign, Sri Lanka has sacked its cricket governing body and it's replaced them with an interim committee. The board came under heavy criticism after Sri Lanka crashed out of the semi-final race following their dismal performance. Sri Lanka has won only 2 of their 7 World Cup matches. Sri Lanka's Ministry of Sport has appointed World Cup winning former captain Arjuna Ranatunga as the head of the committee. Ranatunga will be joined by 2 retired Supreme Court judges in the 7-member committee. And if you talk about the World Cup actually, well, Bangladesh and Sri Lanka are locking horns in an ICC World Cup match in New Delhi today. Bangladesh has decided to bowl after winning the toss. When reports last came in, Sri Lanka was at 66 with the loss of 2 wickets. Bangladesh made 1 change in the playing 11. Tanzim Hassan has replaced Mustafizur. Whereas Sri Lanka has made 2 changes, where Dhananjaya and Kusala Pereira are in for Karunaratne and Hemanta. Sri Lanka are currently 7th in the table with 4 points from 7 matches, which includes 2 wins and 5 losses. and Bangladesh have been eliminated from the last 4 contention after 6 defeats out of 7 matches. So both sides primarily playing for pride, and we'll keep getting you updates on that and much more on DD India News Hour. But do let us know your thoughts because that's all we have for the moment. We're on Facebook, X, formerly Twitter, as well as Instagram. We'll be back with more news and updates as they break right here on DD India. I'm Gautam Roy, and from all of us here in Delhi, thanks for watching DD India News Hour.